Escalating conflict in the Middle East. It's time for the Daily Debrief. Let's get right to it. President Biden ordered retaliatory airstrikes against Iran-backed terrorists after they injured 3 American soldiers in northern Iraq. The airstrikes come as conflict in the Middle East continues to escalate, and U.S. officials have yet to rule out additional use of force. White House officials said President Biden made the decision while spending Christmas with family at Camp David, but he has since returned to the White House. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement that while the U.S. does not seek to escalate conflict, we are fully committed and fully prepared to take further necessary measures to protect our people and our facilities. Israeli Foreign Minister Ron Dermer is in Washington this week, briefing White House and congressional officials about Israel's war against Hamas. Dermer is expected to brief members of Congress as well on additional phases of Israel's conflict against Hamas. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed published on Christmas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel would continue its war until Hamas is destroyed. All right, let's head to the Decision Desk 2024 update, where Nikki Haley has now replaced Ron DeSantis as Donald Trump's rival-in-chief. With just a few weeks until the January 15th Iowa caucus and the January 25th New Hampshire primary, Nikki Haley is polling 13 percentage points behind Trump in the Granite State. Haley's campaign is saying that she's got momentum, but whether it's a blip or a surge remains to be seen. Trump world, meanwhile, they're not taking any chances. Sources close to the campaign say that they've got the benefit of 2 presidential cycles worth of experience to mobilize a base that they say will not desert Trump. Haley's orbit, meanwhile, is pushing to get Chris Christie out of the race. She's arguing that supporters of the former New Jersey governor turned sharp Trump critic would back Haley over Trump in a primary. And then there's DeSantis, who is still polling second in Iowa behind Trump. But Republican strategists have told me in the last few days that they're wondering if the campaigns for DeSantis, Christie, and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to have enough cash to keep bankrolling their campaigns after Iowa. DeSantis needs to overperform in Iowa, according to these sources, in order to justify his campaign moving forward. As for Trump, well, he took to social media in Christmas to wish his supporters a happy holiday and to attack special counsel Jack Smith as well as his other opponents. Now, he had a few choice words that I won't repeat on air, but let's just say it was in the vein of that Home Alone line, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal." And you can follow all of the latest 2024 general election and primary polling numbers by visiting the Decision Desk HQ on elections2024.thehill.com. Turning to the rest of the world now with my friend and colleague, The Hill's foreign policy reporter, Laura Kelly. Laura, what's Washington's reaction to President Biden's authorizing the use of airstrikes in Iraq?
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. I believe that people who are more critical of President Biden's approach to the Middle East in general and Iran in particular, they may not have the most congratulations for President Biden taking this strike against these foes, but they will be encouraging probably more tough action. Whereas President Biden's allies in Congress, who are pushing for diplomacy with Iran where it's possible because of fear over its nuclear program, will worry that this kind of action by the U.S. might raise tensions in the region in a way that could develop into a larger conflict.
So put simply, that's what's happening in Iraq. But why should Americans care about the Iran-backed Houthi rebels attacking vessels in the Red Sea?
This is a major area of commerce, of transportation, and if it's not safe for vessels to transit through there, our whole supply system can get disrupted.
And so, meanwhile, here in Washington, Israeli Foreign Minister Ron Dermer, he's meeting with officials. What's he going to be doing?
There's probably a lot to talk about between U.S. officials and Israeli officials. They're still trying to work to get these negotiations to release hostages from Hamas. Israel and the U.S. are in deep conversations with Qatar to try and get Hamas to come into some agreement in releasing more hostages. There's about 129 that are still in Hamas captivity. But it's also about how Israel's continuing to prosecute its war against Hamas with a really unbelievable death toll in the Gaza Strip, somewhere around 20,000, although it's difficult to verify those numbers. And then there's the concern about this conflict expanding into a wider war in the region. There's always attacks happening across the border between Hezbollah and Lebanon and Israel. And then these concerns about attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East and where Iran is in supporting its proxy groups.
I want to ask you about the Ukraine funding fight happening in Washington when they return in the next couple of weeks. You've traveled to Ukraine on the ground, reporting on the war there. What impact is the funding going to have should it reach President Zelensky of Ukraine?
There's both a political signal and a practical implication to this funding actually being delivered. The political signal is that the U.S. is standing with Ukraine, and I received messages over Christmas. This was the first time that Ukrainians held Christmas on December 25th, as they tried to separate themselves more from Russia and the Russian Orthodox Church, which is such a powerful political figure in Russia. And so I received messages of Merry Christmas from Ukrainians in Ukraine, and I said, what do you want to see from the U.S.? And they really want to see this package come through, if only to show that America still supports Ukraine. And then practically, Ukrainian President Zelensky is looking for more war materials. He needs more air defenses to protect against Russian attacks on Ukrainian critical infrastructure and for Ukraine to take the fight to Russia. There were reports that Ukraine had demolished or destroyed a Russian ship in the Black Sea in a Crimean port. And these are some of the kind of attacks that Ukraine wants to do more of because it hasn't succeeded in gaining a lot back of its territory in this summer counteroffensive.
Laura Kelly, thanks so much for breaking down all of the different geopolitical stories happening now around the world. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Senator Lindsey Graham is clucking back against New York Democrats who are backing a bill that would force Chick-fil-A to stay open on Sundays at public rest stops in New York. The fast food chain has always remained closed on Sundays to allow for its employees to go to worship if they choose. Graham says he'll introduce legislation that would withhold funds from public rest stops if the New York bill moves forward. Let's talk tech. There's been a lot of doom and gloom these days about the rise of artificial intelligence. I can't even tell you how many sources I've interacted with over the last few years have been capitalizing off of people's emotions by rousing up so much anxiety on the technological revolution. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. Technology can be used for bad, but it's not all fear and loathing out on the digital frontier. In fact, the medical health industry has been using artificial intelligence to help patients meet the future of their health and wellness. Now, there's one study that just came out that found that AI has the potential to predict someone's death with nearly 80% accuracy. A team of Danish and U.S. scientists created a database of 6 million people and found that the AI had remarkable accuracy. Think of it as the Twilight Zone meets ChatGPT meets the classic Lionel Barrymore flick, You Can't Take It With You. It got me thinking. Would you want to know how much life you have left to live? And how might that impact your ability to meet the future of whatever life you're living now? Or perhaps the better question, if you knew how much time your loved ones had left to live, would it change the way you're interacting with them today? A robot, mind you, cannot control that. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. And that's it for today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.